Hello and welcome to the latest of the cover notes of Insurance Europe. As we continue the series of these bite-sized webinars from our side, we're bringing you two new voices here from Insurance Europe as we're starting a new chapter. We look different than the people you normally see here. My name is Thea Utoft. I am the recently appointed Director General for Insurance Europe, and I'm joined today by Frédéric de Courtois, our recently appointed President. We will talk to you about some of the things that are top of mind for us at the moment for insurance and in the current context. But firstly, Frédéric, welcome to the cover note, and I'll allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
Good afternoon, Thea. Happy to be with you all. First, I'm extremely happy to be with you. I'm extremely happy to be the President of Insurance Europe. Who am I? I am, first of all, an insurer. I've been in the insurance industry for 32 years at AXA Generali. I've worked in different countries. I've worked in France, I've worked in Germany, I've worked in Japan, and I've worked in Italy. So I'm an insurer, and I think I have an international perspective on the market. I'm now at AXA. I'm the Deputy CEO at AXA, in charge of finance, strategy, risk management, underwriting, and tech. I don't forget anything. And I think it's good to have a president which has also a lively perspective on the business and how it is doing in a big international group. So this is, in a nutshell, who I am.
A busy man for sure.
Busy, yes, but I pay attention to having a good work-life balance. I'm traveling a lot. I'm traveling a third of my time, so I need some time to rest.
Okay, that sounds very familiar. Very familiar indeed. If we move to the topics that we are talking about today, you and I both took up our roles recently here at Insurance Europe, and we took up our roles at a time when there's a lot of things happening, as it's an important time for the insurance industry, but it's also an important time for Europe. We are taping this on the day of the vote on the new Commission. So we have a new Commission coming in. Our world is facing a range of unprecedented and interrelated challenges. We have an impact on the sector from all these challenges, but more importantly, we also see that we as a sector can be part of that solution. We can talk about protection gaps, we can talk about investment gap. Protection gap, for the ones of you who are not familiar with the term, is where people are actually not covered by the risks that they face in the different situations that they face as individuals or as companies. But we also see that Europe has a massive need for investments, what we call the investment gap, if we want to stay in the terminology. All of these things, of course, produce a lot of challenges for us going forward, something that we at Insurance Europe want to be a part of the conversation on. But again, I want to pick a little bit more in your experience in the sector. Looking at the sector from an insurer's perspective, looking back throughout your career. By the way, I have to take a little pause. How many of the languages of the countries that you've worked in do you speak?
I speak French, I speak English, I speak fluent Italian. I used to speak well German.
Okay.
And I don't speak Japanese.
See, that was the one I was looking for.
I tried hard.
That was the one I was looking for. But if you look back throughout that career, how has the industry changed throughout that? And is there something that hasn't changed at all?
That's a good question. And if you, with my 32 years of insurance experience, I can tell you that it has changed a lot. If, for instance, you can imagine that at that time, so let's say 32 years ago, we had no risk management in insurance companies.
Okay.
Absolutely crazy. So for companies supposed to take risk and underwrite risk, so we had no risk management function. We had, of course, we were already tech-friendly companies, but tech has changed a lot in insurance companies over the past years. and it is accelerating. I'm a big believer in the impact of AI and data on insurance companies. As I often say, the insurance companies are based on various materials, and these materials are text, images, and voice. And this is exactly where AI is good at. So I believe that we are going through a tech transformation that will have deep impact on the insurance industry. So again, big changes on the way we manage the insurance companies, with the risk management having a stronger role, and the companies are much more disciplined than before, but also an ongoing tech revolution that we have now in front of us.
And something that hasn't changed at all. Does that exist in this world?
Of course. I think the core of the business has remained the same. The core of the mission has remained the same. Our job is to protect people and companies, and this has not changed. What we do it in a more sophisticated way, and what has changed on this is that we are much more aware of our social responsibility. This is about climate, of course. This is about how can we make sure that everybody is insured at the fair price with good products. So yes, the core insurance business has changed. The way to do it has evolved, of course.
Okay. So one word to characterize insurance, or the insurance sector, what would that be?
I think at the end, insurance has demonstrated to be resilient.
Okay.
Has demonstrated to be resilient. If you look at all the crises we have experienced the 2008 crisis, we have experienced the extra low interest rate environment, we have experienced inflation over the past years, and I think the insurance companies are solid. They have demonstrated that they are resilient. And this is extremely important, because at the end, we make a promise. We make a promise to our clients, be it individual clients or companies. And insurance companies, they make a promise, they need to be solid to be able to fulfill this promise. What about you, Thea? How do you see the evolution of the past years, especially on, you have a big experience on the financial services policy in Europe. What has changed?
I think the main change has been that there's a very high volume of regulation that's been created post-financial crisis. We had a very big regulation boom just on the back of the financial crisis, and I feel we've been, over the last couple of years, we've been busy revisiting those, looking at if we got them right or wrong. And that, of course, has produced, that initiative to regulate post the financial crisis has produced quite a lot of instruments. I believe for the insurance legislation, it's gone from 12 to 70 pieces of legislation, and that's just for insurance. And if you look at the complexity of these instruments that we need to comply with as a sector, they've also gotten very complex, and that's why these revisions has been taking up a lot of energy. If you look at something that's core for our business, Solvency II, just counting the pages, not the obligations, not the paragraphs, just counting the pages, you've got 3,500 pages of legislation just on that one piece. So I'm not going to say they're all that big, but multiply that with 70, you've got a solid book. Another thing that's also really interesting to look at is the fact that it's very interconnected. So legislations are starting to, let's say, hold each other's hands, and sometimes one of the important things is to make sure that those requirements actually make sense from a holistic perspective. We also see that the financial sector used to be, and insurance used to be, let's say, the core of the legislation that they were under, where we're now seeing that what we've been talking about a lot as well is that we're integrated in the economy, the societal obligation that you talk about. That's also now starting to reflect in legislations that used to be very far from us are now also having an impact on our business. Maybe it's because we as a sector take our responsibility seriously and we want to contribute on green transition, on digital transition, but it also shows that that's necessarily not the people who know the most about our world, insurance, financial services, who are then involved in those. So more conversations for us to be a part of than before, and much more complex conversations, because Solvency II still is our Bible, and we need to adhere to that. But how does that interact with our ability to do all the other things? So it's one of the things I find that's very key for what we're doing here, is to look at that holistic perspective and look at the full book, not just the 3,500 book.
And of course, nobody is challenging that the insurance industry needs to be regulated.
Of course not.
But would you say that we are too much regulated?
I think it's a matter of regulation fit for purpose. I think it's a matter of, there's a lot of regulation that has a very good intention. As you say, nobody's challenging that we need to be regulated. But we also need to be able to do, as you say, fulfill that mission that is about protecting. So there are definitely areas where we are using some very big guns to shoot some very small birds, if I can use or translate a Danish saying. So I think there is a real value in looking at some of the things we've seen from the political level with this upcoming commission. Can we do what we want to do in a less burdenful way? Can we find ways to make sure that we're efficient also in the way we write legislation? You can look at some of the information that we give our customers. We want to give our customers a good advice. We want to give our customers a good information. We want to give them a good product. But if you have to spend 2.5 hours going through all these things, that information almost becomes a barrier, because the consumer at the end of the day might not necessarily be able to make use of that information the way that it's presented. So I think we need to be innovative and think about it. And I think regulators, and I can then put on my old hat, we try to achieve that exact same thing. But if you then take the layer cake that becomes all the obligations, maybe we need to cut through and then say, okay, this is already doing what we need to do. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that, because it's already covered. So coming back to, I think that's the holistic approach as well. I'd love to see that more from policymakers.
I fully agree. I fully agree.
So, but yeah, there's definitely there are definitely some challenges in that, because it's important to have that conversation, and that's our role, to be able to convene that conversation to a certain extent.
No doubt.
If we look at challenges, what are the challenges that we see that come this way? So if you look at it from your perspective, do you see that policymakers can then make that difference for those challenges, so that we can contribute to some of those solutions? We talked about protection gap. We've also talked privately before this about some of the climate risks that we are looking at as a sector.
No, sure. So I obviously see challenges. I see also a lot of opportunities. So if I look at the challenges, you mentioned the first one, which is that we need a fit-for-purpose regulation. We need less regulation. We need regulation that are simple. We need regulation that have been studied well. So I think there is some work to do now with the Commission and with the Parliament to make sure that after a few years of heavy regulation, we simplify what we can simplify. There are some other challenges. Climate change is obviously a challenge for insurance companies. Climate change leads to more natural catastrophes. So this is a challenge we obviously need to tackle. But I see also opportunities to build a better Europe, and I think the insurance industry is part of the solution. So I think we have the possibility to do a lot on the protection gap. You defined protection gap earlier, meaning to make sure that citizens and companies are well protected, be it on natural catastrophes, be it on cyber, be it on pension, be it on health. There is a lot to do to make sure that, again, our European citizens and companies are well protected, which they are not fully today. There are a lot of opportunities to promote investments in Europe. And the insurance industry in Europe being a a 10 trillion euro balance sheet, we can contribute to this, and we can invest in a consistent manner with the Commission priorities. But we have to make sure that we do it, that the environment is positive on this. We have to make sure that we gather more savings from our citizens in Europe. You know that Europe is exporting savings today. So we are a continent which is saving a lot, and we are exporting savings because our citizens and companies are investing out of Europe. So how do we make sure that they can invest in Europe with good opportunities? The last opportunity I would mention is the opportunity to contribute to the climate transition in a smooth way. And here insurance companies can act as investors on the asset side, and they can act as insurers on the liability side, protecting the transition, protecting new technologies that act to reduce carbon emission, and so on and so on. So again, I see challenges, I see opportunities, and I believe that all of this is in our hands. So both the Commission, the Parliament, and the insurance industry. The question is, are we going to be up to the task? We have a new Commission, or we almost have a new Commission now. So I'm hopeful, but I'm a pragmatic guy, and I believe in facts. So I know that everybody is aware that we have an issue in Europe. We have a competitiveness issue in Europe. We know most of the solutions, especially thanks to the report from Mario Draghi. Are we going to be courageous enough to implement these solutions? We will see.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, as we're on the cusp of that new cycle. I think you raised a lot of different points that we'll probably come back to in coming cover note conversations. So just a little bit of an advertisement. If you want us to discuss a specific topic, if you want us to discuss or want me to invite a specific person, you can always reach out to us here in Insurance Europe and suggest things. That would be lovely, because you might have some interesting ideas that we haven't thought about for these cover notes. And as you know, this is my first one. So there's going to be a lot more of these coming up.
Would you tell us at the end, Thea, what are your priorities with Insurance Europe?
My priorities with Insurance Europe? Well, I think one of the very important things for me is that Insurance Europe is, of course, and I'm not just saying that because he's sitting here and he's my president, by the way, that Insurance Europe is a member-based, member-driven organization. So for me, the first very important thing is, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that, I'm going to be going around and meeting all my members. I want to get to know my members. I want to hear their priorities, their concerns, but I also really want to hear about their priorities for the future, because, as you say, we are at a very interesting point in the European legislative cycle. So we've got 5 years to look ahead to with a new Commission. I would love to hear from our membership. What are their wishes and their needs for the future? How do they feel that we fit in? Looking at it from their national perspective, but also how that fits into the European perspective and how it contributes. Well, another priority is, of course, that I want to make sure that Insurance Europe is, and that's my key priority, is a clear, strong voice in the discussion here in Brussels and in the debate. And as you say, how can we contribute? Finding ways to engage in those conversations and new conversations that are coming up as well. Our mission as Insurance Europe doesn't change because the Director General changed. It's a matter of finding a way that there is a political, economic and social environment where we can, as a sector, but also us as Insurance Europe, can continue to fulfill that mission that you talked about, providing protection for individuals, for companies, and thereby building a strong European society and economy. So there are a lot of different topics that we can discuss in that perspective. We can probably come back to that in a deep dive, but of course, looking at the political guidelines of Ursula von der Leyen, something about competitiveness is going to be key for us. You mentioned it as well. We talked about it a little bit. Looking at fit for purpose regulation as a whole is going to be really important. There are emerging risks coming up. You've got topics like cyber, you've got topics like climate. How do we help on the green and the digital transition? All those topics, and then we've got a lot of open files as well, actually, carried over from the former commission. What do we do about the retail investments space? And of course, the retail investment strategy, as we speak, is still an open file. So that's something that I'm going to be working with the team to be actively engaged in, because it's a core issue for us. As you mentioned, insurance companies have a nice big balance sheet as an industry that can drive a lot of investments that, I personally would hope we don't have to export out of Europe, and do a lot of good for the European economy and for the European citizenship. So
I can see you will not get bored.
Not at all, not at all. So like you're a busy man, I'm probably going to be a busy person too.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. So I think we might want to stop it here for this time. This was the first of my cover notes for Insurance Europe. There will be more. Get in touch with us if you've got other topics, or if you want to see Frédéric again and ask him different questions, let us know. And then I look forward to seeing you all as part of the conversation here in Brussels and elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thea. Thank you to you all.